Cedar Hollow, Texas, was the kind of place where time drifted instead of ticking. It lay quiet beneath endless sky and rust-colored hills, the town barely a whisper on the map. People here believed in privacy, in routine, in minding your own business. And for 6 years, that's exactly what Elena Cruz had relied on. Her auto shop sat 2 miles outside town limits, a squat building weathered by sun and storms. Most mornings, her neighbors would wake to the deep, throaty growl of engines being tested behind the shop. Locals joked that she was rebuilding jet fighters out there. None of them had ever been invited to see what lay past the hangar doors. Elena was 43, but moved with a physical precision that suggested combat training or something close to it. Her dark hair was always tied back under a worn ball cap, her emerald eyes unreadable beneath the brim. She wore the same uniform every day, faded jeans, scuffed boots, a dark tank top beneath an oil-streaked jumpsuit that never quite zipped to the top. A faint scar curved along her collarbone, almost like a signature. People had theories, of course. One said she was a war widow. Another claimed she'd been in witness protection. Old Ben Whitaker at the diner swore up and down that Elena had once been military, pointing to the way she stood still as stone when the flag rose over the school. But Elena never confirmed anything. She answered what needed answering and left the rest alone. No one in Cedar Hollow knew about the hangar hidden behind the shop. No one saw the UH-60 Black Hawk inside, stripped of insignia, painted matte gray, and kept in a state of readiness that bordered on obsession. Elena had rebuilt it piece by piece, with no help, no instruction, and no explanation. Her hands knew every rivet, every system. It was as if she were remembering instead of learning. Etched faintly into the pilot's door was a single word: Phantom. Every Sunday at dusk, Elena would sit in the cockpit, hands resting on the controls. She never started the engines. She just sat there, staring at the fading sun through a cracked windshield, as if waiting for something only she could see. On a Monday morning, storm clouds brewed on the distant horizon, the kind that twisted the wind and warned the old-timers to stay indoors. Elena was elbow-deep under the Black Hawk chassis when she heard it, a low, steady crunch of gravel under wheels, heavier than local trucks. Too synchronized. Military, maybe. She slid from under the aircraft, wiping grease from her fingers as 3 matte black SUVs pulled up to the edge of the property. No plates, no markings. 6 men stepped out, each one moving with eerie coordination. Not soldiers, operators. They were followed by a man in sharp fatigues, no dust on his boots, eyes sweeping the surroundings like he was scanning for targets. He didn't knock. He didn't ask permission. "You're Elena Cruz," he said. It wasn't a question. Elena didn't flinch. She met his eyes and waited. Her silence, honed through years of practice, stretched between them like razor wire. The man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "We need to talk." Behind her, a canvas tarp shifted slightly from a wind. Underneath it hung a flight suit, still pressed, still waiting. Elena said nothing. The man stepped forward. His name tag read Lieutenant Adrian Beck. His posture said he'd never been told no. "We know who you really are," he said, "and we know what's in that hangar." He paused, watching her for a reaction. He didn't get one. "We're not here to arrest you," Beck continued. "We're here because we need your help. Someone out there is dying, and you're the only pilot alive who can pull this off." Still, Elena didn't move. Beck narrowed his eyes, then dropped the name like a hammer. Caleb Ortiz. The name struck something deep, a flicker in her eyes. Barely there, but Beck saw it. He's pinned down behind enemy lines. The extraction window closes in 12 hours. The pilot assigned to the mission refused to fly it. Said it's a suicide run. But Ortiz made one request. If anything ever went wrong, he wanted only one pilot to come get him. Beck took one more step forward. He asked for Hawk. Elena's jaw tightened. 10 years ago, Captain Sierra Hawk Reyes had died in a classified desert operation. Her name wiped from databases, her record sealed under black tape and silence. Elena Cruz was born from that erasure, a ghost with calloused hands and a new name. But now the past had driven up her gravel road. The Black Hawk behind her began to hum, systems warming from residual charge, instruments flickering softly in standby mode. Beck's voice dropped. He trusted you to bring him home. Are you going to let him die out there? Elena glanced at the sky. The storm was closer now. She could hear the low growl of thunder like it was answering the call. She turned back to Beck. I don't fly anymore. Beck didn't argue. He simply handed her a file. Satellite photos. Flight paths. Infrared scans. You already did, he said. 3 weeks ago, over the Nevada desert. We tracked an unidentified aircraft pulling maneuvers only one squadron ever used. He leaned in, voice sharp as a blade. There's no official record of Phantom Squadron, but we both know you didn't just disappear. And right now, your godson is bleeding out in a canyon with 30 hostiles closing in. Elena said nothing. Behind her, the tarp rippled again. The flight suit waited, and so did the storm. The hangar lights flickered once, then held steady. Elena Cruz stood alone beneath the steel rafters, the file from Lieutenant Beck lying open on the workbench. Satellite images, encrypted reports, and thermal scans blurred together into a single undeniable truth. Caleb Ortiz was alive, and he was asking for her. The Black Hawk sat like a dormant beast behind her, silent but coiled. Elena moved with purpose now, her hesitation gone. She crossed the hangar floor and opened the weapons locker hidden behind the far wall. Inside were remnants of another life, gear that no civilian mechanic had any business owning. Encrypted comms, survival kits, a sidearm with custom modifications, and the flight suit she hadn't worn since her last classified mission. The name patch had been torn off years ago, but the fabric still remembered. Her fingers did too, moving with the practiced grace of someone who'd done this 1,000 times under fire and fear. She suited up slowly, methodically. Each strap, each buckle, felt like a promise being remade. As she reached for her helmet, a photograph slipped loose from the locker's upper shelf. A younger version of herself stood beside 6 men and women, all in flight gear, all weary-eyed and dust-covered. In the center stood Caleb, barely 20, smiling with that reckless energy only the young carried into war. She stared at the image for a moment, then folded it and tucked it into her flight vest. Outside, the wind howled across the flatlands, rattling the chain-link fence around her property. The storm had arrived early. She climbed into the cockpit and ran the startup sequence by heart. Fuel pumps, hydraulics, avionics, each system responding like muscle memory. The Blackhawk's twin engines spun up, turbines whining as the rotors slowly began to turn. Lights flared across the control panel in sequence. She'd modified this bird beyond standard specs: silent running capability, electronic countermeasures, infrared dampeners. Features that didn't officially exist. As the rotors roared to life, Elena keyed the secure comms, channel only 3 people in the world had access to. Hawk to Phantom 6. Requesting confirmation of target location. Status update. Over. Static. Then a ragged voice broke through the storm. Hawk? Jesus, is that really you? Confirm identity. Ortiz. Phantom 6. Grid 33 by 19. We're boxed in. 1 Kia. 2 wounded. Hostiles all around. No exfil possible without air. I knew you'd come. Elena's grip tightened around the stick. Hold position. I'm en route. 30 minutes. Make it 20. They're moving in. She lifted off, the Black Hawk rising into the turbulent sky with the kind of control that only came from obsession. Below her, the shop and the small life she'd built shrank into shadow. She didn't look back. Rain lashed the windows. Lightning forked across the horizon. But the machine responded like it was born for this storm. So was she. Elena flew low, beneath radar, hugging the terrain. Her display pulsed with incoming weather patterns, gusts nearing 50 knots, visibility shrinking fast. Conditions most pilots wouldn't dare cross in daylight, let alone through narrow canyons at night. But Hawk was not most pilots. As she neared the New Mexico border, the terrain changed, flatter at first, then rising into jagged red cliffs and crumbling sandstone passes. These weren't just canyons, they were tactical nightmares. Thin air, no cover, and perfect kill zones for ambushes. She activated thermal imaging. The feed lit up with heat signatures, clusters of armed figures converging from three sides, converging on a position hidden beneath an overhang. 6 bodies, 5 moving, 1 heat signature cooling fast. The extraction site was a death trap. Elena keyed her mic. Phantom 6, I see you. Prep for dust-off. I won't be landing. Copy that. 1 minute. In the back of the aircraft, a mechanical harness clicked into place, cables extending through the open side door. She'd installed a vertical extraction system years ago for situations exactly like this. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. She swept into the canyon with barely enough clearance for the rotor tips. Gunfire erupted from the ridge lines, tracers stitching the air behind her tail. She jerked the Black Hawk sideways, dipping beneath a rock outcrop, then climbed again in a tight corkscrew. The canyon walls danced inches from her rotors. Elena leveled the bird 30 feet above the team's position and released the first cable. Move now. You got 30 seconds. Below, chaos erupted. Caleb's team moved with speed only desperation could produce. 2 men lifted a wounded soldier onto the harness. A second cable descended as gunfire cracked from above. Elena triggered the defense system. Flares screamed out in all directions, lighting the canyon like fireworks. Shouts and panic followed from the hostiles above. A rocket-propelled grenade streaked past her tail rotor, missing by inches. Caleb's voice came through the comm. 3rd man up. 2 still down here. 10 seconds. I'm staying to cover them. Get the wounded clear. The winch reeled in the first 3, slamming the hatch shut behind them. Elena circled again, this time lower, almost scraping the canyon floor. She released the last line. Caleb and his last teammate hooked in. Bullets pinged off the armor plating. A second RPG flew beneath her fuselage and detonated against the far canyon wall. Go! Caleb yelled. Elena pulled collective, and the Black Hawk surged skyward, rising through rain and smoke like a phoenix in reverse. As they cleared the ridge, another rocket screamed from the shadows below. Too late. The Black Hawk disappeared into cloud cover, invisible once more. Inside, the cabin was a mess of blood, sweat, and adrenaline. Caleb crouched over the wounded, his face pale but alert. He looked up toward the cockpit, catching a glimpse of the woman flying the impossible bird. 10 years, he whispered, and she still flies like the laws of gravity don't apply. Elena didn't answer. Her focus was locked on the storm ahead. Because this wasn't over. If Beck knew how to find her, others would follow. And someone had set up Caleb's mission to fail. The Black Hawk touched down at a long-abandoned airstrip 50 miles outside El Paso. The cracked tarmac stretched into desert silence, bordered by rusting fencing and thorny brush. No lights, no markings, no questions. Elena cruised power down the engines, but kept the systems hot, just in case. The storm still growled overhead, but the air here felt heavier, like the calm between lightning strikes. Inside the helicopter, Caleb Ortiz helped unload the wounded with help from his last 2 teammates. One man was unconscious, blood soaking through field dressings. Another limped badly, his boots soaked red. The third looked around nervously, weapon still clutched tight in trembling hands. Elena climbed down and approached without a word. She didn't need introductions. Caleb looked older than she remembered, thicker around the shoulders, beard darker with dust and sweat. But his eyes still held that same haunted fire. You came, he said quietly. You asked, Elena replied. And I keep promises. He nodded once, then gestured toward the low Quonset hut near the edge of the field. We set this up 6 months ago. Figure we need somewhere off the books. There's gear inside. Food. Comms. Secure encryption. They moved inside, ducking beneath a battered steel doorway. The interior was stark, military cots, crates, and an array of satellite feeds displayed on a series of dusty monitors. Maps littered the walls, some marked with red pins, others slashed with black ink excess. Elena scanned the room. Her instincts flared. You've been preparing for this. Caleb nodded grimly. Ever since Ghost Squadron went dark. He pulled up a file from one of the encrypted drives and handed her tablet. The screen flickered, then displayed the words. Operation Eclipse. Systematic neutralization of unsanctioned assets. Elena's eyes narrowed. It's a purge, Caleb said. A Control 1. Someone high up realized Ghost Squadron was a liability. Too many secrets. Too many operators who knew what lines got crossed. So they've been erasing us. He swiped through images. Surveillance shots. Autopsy reports. Fabricated accident scenes. 3 of our pilots are already dead. 1 drowned off the coast of Honduras. Another hit by a drunk driver. A 3rd, suicide, they claimed. Except the autopsy shows wrist ligature marks and pulmonary edema from waterboarding. Elena's jaw tensed. And the others? Gone underground. But that's the thing. Even hiding doesn't help. They're being hunted. And we finally found out who's doing the hunting. He tapped another file. Subject, Colonel Mason Drake. Formerly Phantom 3. Now attached to intelligence operations under the Department of Strategic Covert Affairs. Elena's breath caught. Drake had flown with them. He was the one who taught her evasive canyon flying, but once pulled her from a burning cockpit in Yemen. Back then, he'd been principled, even noble. He's the one selling us out? Looks that way, Caleb confirmed. He moved up fast. Too fast. Untraceable money transfers. Hidden bank accounts. Private contractors being funneled through shell companies. And now, Eclipse. The name burned like acid. Elena paced the hut, her mind racing. Beck's appearance hadn't been recruitment. It had been containment. A test. Lure her out. Use Caleb as bait. Then strike. Caleb leaned against the wall, watching her. They wanted to bring you in quietly. But if that failed, they were going to make it look like I never existed. A long silence passed. Wind rattled the tin walls. One of the injured men groaned from his cot. Finally, Caleb said, I've been tracking this for a year. Compiling data. Routing it through shadow servers. There's a dead drop server on the East Coast. The moment I upload this, Eclipse is exposed. Then why haven't you done it? Because I need proof. Not just documents. A name. A location. A conversation. He pulled out a small device. A listening module with encrypted recording. And tonight, we're going to get it. Elena frowned. You mean Drake's nearby? No, but Beck is. And Beck works for him. He opened a second tablet, showing drone surveillance footage from less than an hour ago. 3 SUVs. Military build. No plates. Same as before. They're setting up at the county airfield, 30 miles east. Using it as a temporary command post. We intercepted their comms. They're coordinating an operation for dawn. They're coming for you, Elena. She took that in silently. The betrayal wasn't surprising. Only the speed of it. Then we hit them first, she said. Caleb raised an eyebrow. You sure? Elena looked at him, her voice low. I'm done hiding. If they want Hawk, then they're going to get her. She moved to the corner of the hut and unlatched a long steel case. Inside was her personal gear. Helmet, comms, tactical harness, and something else, an encrypted drive with the original Phantom flight records. Names, missions, confirmations that they'd once existed, even if the government now said otherwise. I'll give them a ghost, she said, but not the one they expect. By midnight, they were moving. Caleb stayed behind with the wounded and his sat phone, maintaining comms with Elena as she flew. The Black Hawk lifted again into the clouds, this time cloaked in rain and vengeance. The county airfield was a ghost town at night. A single hangar, 2 fuel trucks, and, according to Caleb's recon, a team of 12 personnel stationed with full tactical gear. Elena flew low and fast, circling 2 miles out to deploy the first device, a relay beacon designed to intercept short-range, encrypted comms. The data streamed to Caleb in real time. They're coordinating with someone in D.C., Caleb reported over the comms. Name trace confirms it. Mason Drake. Elena's stomach turned. There was the direct link. All she needed now was voice. She crept in lower, using the terrain to mask her approach. The Blackhawk's modified systems let her run nearly silent. She perched the aircraft behind a ridge, cloaked in darkness, then activated the directional microphone mounted beneath the fuselage. Inside the hangar, Beck's voice rang through the speakers. Authorization confirmed. Target will be apprehended at 0600. If non-compliant, eliminate. We can't afford exposure. Then another voice. Deeper. Familiar. I don't care how you do it. I want Reyes off the map. That's your final directive. No witnesses. Elena stared at the speaker, breath held. She hadn't heard that voice in over a decade. Mason Drake. They had everything now. Names. Orders. Threats. Caleb's voice came through the headset. Elena, you good? No, she said. But I'm ready. She turned back toward the desert, flying beneath the radar, the stolen voices locked into the encrypted drive at her hip. Tomorrow, the world would hear them, and Operation Eclipse would begin to burn. The sun hadn't yet crested the horizon when Elena Cruz touched down in a dry arroyo 10 miles from the county airfield. The sky was a wash of charcoal and bruised blue, the kind of dawn that whispered warning. Her boots hit the desert floor in silence. She moved like a shadow across cracked ground, her flight suit layered with lightweight armor, helmet clipped to her side, encrypted drive tucked under her arm like a ticking heart. Back at the safe house, Caleb Ortiz monitored the airwaves. His voice crackled in her earpiece through a secured channel. Intercept confirms target designation. They're not calling it an arrest anymore. They're calling it a termination protocol. Elena's voice was flat. I figured. You're not planning on walking into that, are you? I'm not walking into anything. I'm going to let them chase me. She scaled the ridge overlooking the tarmac. Through the scope of her recon optics, she counted 3 UH-72 Lakotas on standby, marked under Homeland Security, legal on paper, covert in truth. A dozen operatives moved between hangars, unloading black crates and checking weapons under floodlights. 2 command trucks hummed quietly in the background, communications gear mounted like satellite trees reaching for answers. At the far edge stood Lieutenant Adrian Beck, arms crossed, issuing commands into a headset. He moved with military efficiency, but he wasn't in control. Not fully. Her comms buzzed again. I decrypted a secondary file, Caleb reported. There's a secure channel Beck used twice last night. Guess who picked up? Drake. Confirmed. Mason Drake is en route. Private jet. Estimated touchdown in 40 minutes. The second he lands, they plan to launch the raid on your hangar. Elena took a breath. Then I have 40 minutes to break the chain. Meaning, she zoomed in on the convoy. I'm not just going to outrun them, Caleb. I'm going to tear their operation apart. One thread at a time. At 5:30, Beck received a high-priority signal. A satellite alert indicated activity at Elena's hangar. Motion sensors triggered. Engine heat signatures. Rotor startup. His team scrambled. Move. Move. She's prepping for flight, he barked. Alpha team intercept from the west. Bravo sweeps east. Do not let her lift off. Within 3 minutes, 4 SUVs roared from the airfield. 2 helicopters followed, rotors thundering across the dawn sky. Beck climbed into the lead aircraft, adrenaline sharpening every movement. But as the convoy closed in on the coordinates, they found nothing. The hangar was empty, cold, silent, except for a looping message playing from an old radio sitting on a metal stool in the center of the floor. Nice try, gentlemen, but this isn't my first time being hunted. Beck's eyes darted across the room. Where the hell is she? Back on the ridge. Elena watched it all unfold on a handheld monitor. Her surveillance grid, patched through drones and ground sensors, displayed every vehicle, every radio signal, every frustrated command from Beck's team. She activated Phase 2, 20 miles east, near an old weather station no longer listed on official records. A satellite uplink terminal powered up. It was built into a rusted transmission tower, disguised to avoid detection. Elena's encrypted drive was already wired into the system. Caleb worked quickly. We're live. Uploading audio logs now. I'm routing it through whistleblower networks, encrypted journalistic feeds, and congressional oversight inboxes. On his screen, progress bars flickered across multiple data lines. Drake's orders. Beck's confirmation. The kill protocols. All of it. He leaned closer to the mic. Get ready. You're about to become the most dangerous person in America. Beck's voice exploded over the open channel. We've been set up. She's playing us. Elena keyed her mic. Not a game, Lieutenant. Just a reckoning. She transmitted the voice logs live over their internal frequency. Drake's recorded threats, Beck's own voice confirming the mission. Every operative in the field froze as the evidence played on repeat. Each word an indictment, each second a nail in their operations coffin. In the skies above, Homeland choppers halted mid-pursuit. In the hangars below, a ripple of confusion turned to doubt. Caleb's voice came back in her ear. Upload complete. Multiple downloads confirmed. The files are spreading like wildfire. You ready for the next step? Elena asked. Always. She moved fast now, guiding the Black Hawk out of its canyon hide. She flew west, skimming below the radar net, ducking through rock formations like they were old friends. In less than 15 minutes, she crested the edge of the airfield where Beck's command convoy was regrouping in chaos. Floodlights swept the sky. Shouts rang from radios. No one had answers, and then they heard the rotors. Elena's Black Hawk roared over the field like an avenging storm. She buzzed the tower at 30 feet, scattering operatives and shaking windows. Her targeting systems, illegal, unregistered, locked onto the command truck and the lead helicopter. She didn't fire. She didn't need to. She dropped a payload instead. Metal canisters that cracked open midair, releasing hundreds of folded documents that fluttered down like snow. Printed, hard-copy versions of the Eclipse files. Beck stood in the open, watching secrets fall from the sky. Elena's voice returned on the open channel. I'm not hiding anymore. You wanted to erase me? Try now. The Black Hawk banked hard and vanished into the morning fog. Minutes later, Mason Drake's jet touched down on the airstrip. He stepped out onto the tarmac just in time to see Homeland officers confronting Beck. Someone shoved a printout in his face. His own voice, transcribed, threatening to kill Elena. Within seconds, weapons were drawn. Drake turned back toward his jet, but another vehicle pulled in behind him. Caleb stepped out, holding his satellite phone. Calls for you, he said, tossing it toward Drake's feet. On the other end, someone from the Department of Justice began reading him his rights. From a vantage point miles away, Elena hovered in place, watching through a high-range optical feed as her ghosts were finally dragged into the daylight. Operation Eclipse was burning, and she had lit the match. But she wasn't done. There was one more target, and this time, she was going after the man who created the program from the beginning. 3 days after the fall of the airfield, Elena Cruz stood beneath the rusted canopy of a forgotten gas station 50 miles west of Lubbock. The pumps hadn't worked in 20 years, but the structure's foundation was reinforced. Concrete poured by federal contractors during a time when weather monitoring had been the cover story. Now it served as a meeting point. Caleb arrived at dusk, pulling up in a dusty civilian SUV with modified plates and signal scramblers. He stepped out, sunglasses still on despite the fading sun, and handed Elena a sealed folder. This came through the dead drop in Frankfurt, he said. Intercepted intel from a former contractor. Apparently, he had a change of heart once the audio went public. Elena flipped it open. Inside was a single sheet of high-security paper and a photograph clipped to the top corner. The image showed an older man with silver hair, neatly trimmed beard, and cold blue eyes. He wore a suit tailored to power and habit, standing behind a glass podium at a defense symposium in Brussels. The name below the photo sent a current through Elena's chest. Director Vincent Harrow, the founder of Project Spectre, the original architect of Ghost Squadron, the man who'd vanished into the upper echelons of intelligence after decommissioning the unit a decade earlier. He's alive, Caleb said, and he's watching. Elena's hands tightened around the folder. Where? London, operating under diplomatic cover. Officially part of an advisory board on counterterrorism. Unofficially, he's still directing black-budget operations, possibly including Eclipse. She looked at the coordinates printed beneath the photo. He's vulnerable, only for a narrow window. He's flying into Reykjavik in 2 days. Private aircraft, no military escort. He'll be attending a classified NATO roundtable. Security's tight, but there's a flaw. Elena raised an eyebrow. He doesn't know we're coming. They moved fast. Caleb arranged travel through a retired field operative in Guatemala who owed him a favor. Elena's documents were forged to perfection. Passport, credentials, everything but a retina scan. By the time they boarded the unmarked Gulfstream, the final flight logs were already erased from European tracking servers. In the air, Elena reviewed the old dossiers. Harrow's methods, his patterns, his lies. He'd created Ghost Squadron not as a service to country, but as a private tool, a scalpel when the hammer of diplomacy failed. He had built a team of ghosts, then buried them the moment they became inconvenient. And now he was trading those secrets on the open market. She stared out the window at the Atlantic below. This time, she wasn't going for exposure. She was going for truth. Reykjavik was colder than she expected. The air bit through her flight jacket as they moved through the outer edge of the security perimeter. Elena had memorized the layout of the facility, right down to HVAC routes and emergency maintenance tunnels. Caleb, posing as a security subcontractor, had already hacked into the conference building's internal cameras and created a 20-minute blind spot in the surveillance coverage. 20 minutes. One hallway. One conversation. That was all she needed. At 18:03 local time, Elena passed through a service door, slid past an inactive fire sensor, and emerged into a corridor lined with frosted glass offices. Harrow's escort had just entered room 4B. Elena waited until they stepped inside, then followed. The door clicked softly behind her as it shut. Inside, Vincent Harrow stood at the window, speaking to someone on a secure sat phone. He turned slowly as she entered, eyes narrowing, but he didn't reach for a weapon. "Elena," he said with a tone of recognition that boiled her blood. "Or should I say Sierra Reyes?" "You shouldn't say anything," she replied, "because everything you say now is going to end you." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I was wondering when you'd surface. You're like a bad debt, quiet for years, then suddenly impossible to ignore." She stepped closer, the suppressed pistol at her side steady, but visible. "What?" He folded his hands calmly behind his back. "Ghost Squadron was a success. Too much of one. You did what no one else could. So naturally, you became a liability. You used us. I built you," he snapped. "And when you became dangerous, I shut you down. Like every other obsolete asset." Elena's finger tensed near the trigger, but she didn't raise it. "Not yet. What about the others? The ones you had killed? Ortiz, Jensen, Morales, Collateral. You erased them." "No," Harrow said. "I redirected them. They were just casualties in a war no one wants to admit exists." Caleb's voice came through the earpiece. "We've got it. The feed's live." Elena didn't blink. "You're being recorded." Harrow's smile faded. "You won't get away with this," he said softly. "No," Elena answered. "But you won't walk away from it either." Outside, European security forces were already en route. Caleb had patched the conversation into the Icelandic Ministry of Defense and NATO legal oversight. Harrow's immunity didn't apply to war crimes or extrajudicial assassinations. His voice, cold, calculating, had just damned him. She turned to leave. "You should have stayed buried," he said behind her. Elena paused at the door. "You built ghosts. Now you're going to be haunted by them." Back in Texas, the fallout was immediate. NATO suspended Harrow's credentials. The U.S. intelligence community was forced to launch an internal inquiry. Congressional oversight panels reopened the files on Ghost Squadron, no longer dismissing the unit as legend. But Elena didn't return to the headlines. She didn't stand before cameras or give interviews. She returned to Cedar Hollow. Her hangar remained as it always had, weathered and quiet, flanked by fences and scrub oak. The Black Hawk sat inside, engines cool but primed. Her tools lay exactly where she'd left them. And one morning, weeks later, a letter arrived in a plain envelope. No return address, just a handwritten line across the top. "Thank you for making ghosts visible." Inside was a photograph. 7 names, 7 headstones, properly marked, finally. And at the bottom, under all their call signs, someone had written hers. Hawk. The months following Vincent Harrow's arrest were chaos wrapped in silence. Whistleblower reports triggered congressional hearings. Anonymous leaks flowed to journalists with encrypted inboxes and burn-after-reading policies. The term Ghost Squadron began appearing in redacted documents. always followed by the word deniable. But while the world scrambled to define the pieces, Elena Cruz stayed still. In Cedar Hollow, time kept its lazy rhythm. Engines came in broken, left purring. Locals gossiped about the weird hums they heard at night, chalked it up to weather or maybe a new generator. No one asked too many questions, which suited her fine. But quiet doesn't last. It never does. The warning came from a woman who shouldn't have existed. She showed up just past sunrise. Military fatigues, regulation haircut, a face that tried to look older than it was. Elena was under the hood of Sheriff Clay's cruiser, socket wrench in hand, when she heard the voice behind her. "Are you Elena Cruz?" Elena didn't look up. "Depends. Are you selling something? I was told you might help with a problem." Now she looked. The girl was barely out of flight school, nerves masked behind protocol. But her boots were too clean, her voice too steady. "You're military," Elena said. "Not a question." "Yes. Lieutenant Riley Kane, U.S. Army Aviation." The name meant nothing, yet everything about her felt familiar, as if the same machine had chewed her up and spit her out half-formed, desperate not to get swallowed again. Elena wiped her hands and leaned against the cruiser. "Start talking." Riley didn't hesitate. "There's a program. Officially doesn't exist. Off-the-books tasking. Unregistered flight logs. Selective recruitment. All under something called Initiative 9. Elena froze. She hadn't heard that name in a long time. Initiative 9 had been a placeholder project, a way to house illegal operations without declaring them. Ghost Squadron had lived in its shadow before being cut loose. "They said I had the right psych profile," Riley continued. "Detached. Loyal. Technically gifted. They're looking for someone who won't ask why they're flying where maps don't go." "And you?" Elena asked. "I asked, and the answers didn't feel right." Riley held out a sealed envelope. "They're planning something. A new unit. Not just flight teams this time. Full-spectrum capabilities. Deniable black ops under the cover of humanitarian missions." Elena took the envelope. Inside were briefing memos, partial manifests, and one crucial document marked Foundational Charter, Initiative 9 Revival. She scanned the highlighted lines. Global Force Projection. Command Detachment not under DoD jurisdiction. Operators not subject to UCMJ authority. Final approval through civilian intermediary. The last clause chilled her. Authorization via OCNLIGHT. A private defense contractor, known for handling things too dirty for direct military oversight. Enlisted under active directors. Mason Drake. Elena's jaw locked. "I thought he was in custody." "He was," Riley said. "He cut a deal. Testified against Harrow. Got himself buried in the corporate sector instead of a federal cell. Now he's building again. Quietly." Elena's hand curled around the page. "A fresh war, same architect. They're not done with Ghost Squadron," she murmured. "They're just renaming it." Later that evening, Elena called Caleb. She hadn't spoken to him in weeks, and when he picked up, his voice was already tense. "You saw it too? I've got a kid standing in my shop holding classified files and trauma she doesn't even understand yet." "Mine came in the form of a hit list," Caleb said flatly. "My name's back on it. So is yours. They're scrubbing everything. Evidence, witnesses, history. What about the files we released?" "Being discredited. Labeled foreign disinfo." Eclipse was just the beginning. Drake's cleaned house and built himself a new one with better locks. Elena exhaled slowly. "This girl, Riley Kane, she's not like us." "None of them are," Caleb said. "But that's the point. They're building a unit from scratch. Training them to forget who they are before they ever know." "It's cleaner." A long silence passed between them. Finally, Elena said, "We need to move." Caleb didn't argue. "I've got 3 surviving ghost pilots off-grid. They've stayed buried since Harrow's fall, but if Drake is back, we'll need them." "Names?" "You'll know when they arrive." He paused. "And Elena? There's a facility." "Where?" "Utah Desert. Looks like a defense logistics site, but it's private. Ocean Light owns the perimeter, but no one's seen what's inside. All the Initiative 9 recruitment orders trace back to that GPS sector. It's where they're building the new squad." "Coordinates?" "I'm sending them now." She received the ping. A remote canyon flanked by restricted airspace. No satellite traffic for 2 weeks. No flight logs in or out. It was perfect, and that was the problem. We go in, Elena said. We don't just gather evidence. We dismantle it. That night, she opened the locker behind her shop. Inside, the suit waited. The same flight gear, the same harness, but the badge now worn flat, replaced with a single stitch. V. The Blackhawk's engines whirred to life in the darkness, blades turning slow at first, then building to a roar that sent a shiver through the dry Texas ground. Riley watched from the doorway, speechless. You're really her, she said. Elena slid on her helmet. I'm whoever they need me to be. But this time, I choose where the story ends. Riley took a step forward. Can I come with you? Elena stared at her for a long moment. You sure? No, Riley admitted. But I'm done waiting for permission. Elena nodded once. Then climb in. The Black Hawk lifted into the night sky, invisible to radar, undeniable in purpose. Below, the shop light flicked off. Above, thunder rolled. The Ghost was flying again. The Utah desert was more than barren. It was hollow, the kind of land that swallowed secrets and never spit them back. Dry riverbeds, endless plateaus, and canyons so deep the sun barely touched the floor. Satellites didn't bother scanning here. Too much rock interference, too little payoff. But beneath one such canyon, hidden inside a rock formation marked as Federal Geological Survey property, was a facility without a name. It didn't need one. Elena Cruz and Lieutenant Riley Kane hovered in silence 50 feet above a ridge, both strapped into the Black Hawk's cockpit as wind scraped dust across the canopy. Below them, nestled in the shadows, sat the real heart of Initiative 9. The compound was built like a vault, reinforced hangars carved into the rock, perimeter defenses camouflaged with the environment, and a landing pad disguised as a weather station. From this angle, it looked dormant. It wasn't. Thermal signatures are live, Riley said, eyes glued to the onboard sensor. At least 20 bodies. Heat-masking tech across the front entrance. No visible security, but we both know that's a lie. Elena studied the ridgeline. They're running drills at night to avoid detection. That many warm bodies means a training cycle. New squad. Fresh. They're building the next Ghosts, Riley muttered. No, Elena corrected. They're building something worse. Ghosts made mistakes. Had consciences. This time we're making sure there's none of that. She cut the engines and let the Black Hawk descend onto a natural outcropping, hidden from satellite view by the angle of the canyon walls. They moved quickly, switching into desert recon gear. Lightweight armor, no identifiers. Only encrypted radios and a sealed black box loaded with data infiltration scripts Caleb had built himself. Inside Elena's ear, his voice buzzed. You've got a 3-hour window before their next satellite pulse. Ground sensors will reboot during that cycle. That's your best chance to breach. After that, they lock the place down. Copy that, Elena said. Any word from the other Ghosts? 2 inbound. 1 already on site, south face. You'll meet him at Ingress Point Bravo. Name? Caleb chuckled. Says he'd rather introduce himself in person. Elena grunted. Typical. They moved at speed, ducking through scrub and descending into the canyon's shadow line. Every step took them closer to the truth and deeper into danger. As they rounded the western slope, a low whistle cut through the wind. Elena froze. Then she answered it, 3 notes back. A figure emerged from the rocks above. A man in his 50s, lean, sun-scorched skin, wearing gear that hadn't seen regulation since the last century. Ghost 4, he said, offering a hand. Call me Ren. Riley blinked. You're the guy who disappeared in North Africa. Ren smirked. I disappear lots of places. Elena shook his hand. You ready? Always. Got eyes on their west tunnel. Service entry. Minimal patrols. They're arrogant, relying on remote sensors and badge locks. No one expects ghosts in daylight. Riley glanced toward the compound. What are we looking for? Ren answered without hesitation. Proof. Command structure. Training footage. Rosters. Anything that ties Initiative 9 to Ocean Light and proves Drake's involvement. If we get that out, we dismantle them from the top down. Any word on what they're doing with the recruits? Elena asked. Ren's face turned grim. Yeah, Conditioning. Riley flinched. Psych warfare? Breaking them? No, Ren said. They're rebuilding them. Sleep deprivation. Memory suppression. Neural interface work. They're not training soldiers. They're engineering them. They didn't speak after that. The breach was surgical. They hit the side tunnel during the exact 38-second window when the system cycled diagnostics. Ren bypassed the biometric scanner with a cloned pulse key. Riley cracked the secondary keypad using Caleb's access worm. The metal door hissed open. Inside, the air was cold. Dry. The kind of cold that doesn't belong underground unless someone's maintaining the climate with industrial-grade filtration. They moved in single file through narrow corridors lit only by emergency LEDs. The hallway stretched into a main control hub, unmanned. Dozens of screens flickered with drone feeds, biometric logs, and overhead schematics of the facility. Riley locked into one terminal and started data extraction. Elena and Ren covered both exits. "What am I seeing here?" Riley asked, scrolling rapidly. 12 units. 5 squads each. That's 60 operatives. More, Ren said. Scroll to Unit 9. Riley obeyed. The screen changed. Her face went pale. "That's me." A personnel file stared back at her. Kane Riley. Subject 1139. A. Preselected. High neural plasticity. Primary function. Recon drone protocol. Loyalty status. Under observation. She stepped back, as if distance could erase what she'd seen. "They were tracking me before I enlisted." Elena's voice was a whisper. "They were building a profile before you were ever issued boots." Alarms blared. Red lights stuttered across the corridor. "Perimeter breach detected," an automated voice echoed. "Internal scan anomaly. Lockdown in progress." "We're burned," Ren snapped. "Extraction now." Elena yanked the drive from Riley's hands and dropped a flash load into the system, a virus that Caleb had dubbed Ghostfire. It would scramble their records from the inside out. They ran. The halls filled with pulsing sound. Bulkhead doors began sealing behind them, inch by inch. Riley stumbled, adrenaline crashing into panic. Elena grabbed her arm and pulled hard. "We don't stop." As they neared the exit, 2 guards rounded the corner. Black gear, no names, no insignia. Elena dropped one with a shot to the throat. Ren slammed the second into the wall, snapping his wrist before stealing his sidearm. Outside, the air was chaos. Sirens, searchlights, drones lifting from concealed hatches. Elena keyed her mic, ghost lead. "Extraction now." The Blackhawk roared over the canyon 2 seconds later, silent until it needed to scream. Caleb was at the controls, jaw tight, eyes locked. The chopper dropped to 20 feet. Ren leaped into the rear bay, dragging Riley with him. Elena came last, hurling herself upward just as the rotors screamed against rising wind. Gunfire chased them as they climbed. So did silence. Below, the compound vanished beneath its camouflage netting, as if it had never existed. But they had the files. Proof of a resurrection no one had authorized. A project without oversight. A ghost army being built for war that had never been declared. And now they had to decide what to do with it. They didn't land until they crossed the Nevada state line. The safe house was a buried comms relay left over from Cold War-era testing. Caleb had found it on a decommissioned army map, confirmed its location with a Russian intelligence leak, then refurbished it with solar panels and fiber lines that ran 12 feet beneath the desert floor. It was unlisted, unreachable, and tonight, it would become the most important node on the continent. Elena Cruz paced the concrete interior while Riley and Ghost 4, Ren, dumped the extracted data across a hex cluster server bank Caleb had built inside an old missile silo. The entire system whirred alive like a nervous heartbeat. "Talk to me," Elena said. Caleb leaned over the console. "The data's complete. We got everything. Personnel logs, surveillance video, psychological evaluations, internal comms between Drake and at least 3 defense contractors. Ocean Light's fingerprints are all over it." Riley pulled up a recording, her hands trembling. The screen showed a lab inside the Utah compound, for recruits strapped into chairs, helmets on their heads, glowing with neural sync pulses. A technician typed on a touchscreen as the recruits sat motionless, blank-eyed. Then Drake's voice. Emotion is inefficiency. Memory is chaos. If we remove both, we create absolute control. Elena's jaw tightened. Ren watched the feed, arms crossed. They weren't training soldiers. They were manufacturing loyalty. Caleb clicked through files at rapid speed. There's more. Initiative 9 wasn't a standalone program. It's part of a multi-phase operation, 9 facilities globally. Argentina, Kazakhstan, Sudan. The prototype was here, but the network is worldwide. Elena looked up. You're telling me this is bigger than just OCNLI-GHD? It's a consortium, Caleb replied. Privatized war, intelligence, supply chains, a global black ops ecosystem that doesn't answer to any nation. Drake's just the engineer, but the ones funding it, we haven't even seen their faces yet. Riley stepped back from the screen. So what do we do? Elena stared at the data. Every kill, every voice log, every authorization code, the very architecture of the new machine, now sitting in front of them like a live wire waiting to be touched. We burn it, she said. No time for legal channels? Ren asked. Elena shook her head. We tried that with Eclipse. They buried it, discredited the whistleblowers. This time we go direct. To who? Elena met his gaze. Everyone. They split into roles. Caleb would route the data packets through back doors into civilian networks, newsrooms, advocacy groups, encrypted whistleblower feeds. Ren would hack military-grade comms to simulate an internal breach. Riley, with her active status, would initiate a false training session on an army server farm, masking their digital fingerprints for at least 12 hours. Elena? She would speak. She sat at the center console and activated the vocal modulator, one that disguised tone but preserved intent. The camera was fixed, static, a single red light. When the system gave the green signal, she began. This is not a conspiracy theory. Her voice carried across servers, bouncing between civilian and military bandwidths. This is a fact. Initiative 9 is real. Its architects are not elected. Its funding is not accountable. And its recruits are not volunteers. They are selected, stripped, and rebuilt to serve without question. Behind her, Caleb triggered the feed rotation. Video from the facility. Drake's voice. The training exercises. Logs showing pre-enlistment psychological profiling of young military hopefuls. Elena Cruz never appeared on screen. Only the silhouette of a woman who once wore the name Hawk stitched into a uniform no longer sanctioned by anyone. We were called Ghost Squadron. We were used, then discarded. When that didn't work, they started erasing us. Now, they're building something new, stronger, quieter, more obedient. But they forgot one thing. She leaned forward. Ghosts don't die. We haunt. Caleb hit transmit. Within seconds, the data was in the bloodstream of the internet. Military boards, Reddit forums, security analysis groups, activist war rooms, Twitter clones, legacy networks, email chains. A cascade of pings began across the globe as eyes opened and systems lit up. Some tried to pull the signal. Others tried to trace it. None succeeded. Ren watched the flood build. We just painted a massive target on our backs. We weren't off the radar to begin with, Elena said. Caleb nodded. Now we control the narrative. Now, they can't kill this in the dark. Riley turned from the terminal. They'll come for us. Of course they will, Elena replied. Which is why we don't wait. We go after them first. 10 hours later, back-channel chatter confirmed the breach had gone nuclear. Ocean Light stock plummeted by 40% in pre-market trading. NATO froze 3 logistics contracts. The Argentine government released a statement denying knowledge of any black site facility, even before questions had been asked. In D.C., 3 separate Senate offices filed for emergency review of defense appropriations buried under shell corporations. But the most telling sign? Mason Drake vanished. Caleb broke the news as he stood in the communications bay, eyes fixed on a live intercept from an intelligence data broker in Serbia. Drake's plane left Heathrow. He didn't land. His security detail all rerouted. Digital footprint scrubbed. It's a full, disappearing act. Where would he go? Riley asked. Rin grunted. Where all snakes go when they get burned. Underground. Elena said nothing. She stared at the map projected on the wall, 9 red dots blinking across the world. One was already burning. 8 remained. You said it yourself, she told Caleb. Drake was the engineer, but there's a whole board above him. I've been tracing them, Caleb said. One shell company at a time. There's a pattern. They all lead back to a trust group based in Singapore. Name? Elena asked. Caleb hesitated, then pulled up the file. Arclight International. Elena's face went still. She knew that name. Ghost Squadron had once been tasked with extracting a diplomat whose family was being hunted by a trafficking ring in Eastern Europe. Arclight had been named as a silent backer of the rescue, but nothing ever came of it. Officially, the operation had been redacted, the mission scrubbed, and now, the same name sat at the top of Initiative 9's command structure. She turned away from the console and walked toward the far wall, where the case containing her flight suit sat open. She pulled the zipper all the way up. Where are we going next? Riley asked. Elena glanced toward the blinking red map. Singapore. And after that, Caleb asked. Elena paused. Until every one of those lights goes dark. Rin chuckled softly behind her. You know we're not coming back from this, right? Elena smiled without humor. Then we better make it count. The Black Hawk warmed in the early morning sun, blades slicing the light. The world thought Ghost Squadron was a memory. It was about to learn they were the future's reckoning. Singapore gleamed like a promise, steel towers slicing the sky, glass reflecting the past it had paved over. The city was clean, efficient, and meticulously surveilled, perfect for hiding rot in plain sight. Elena Cruz stood inside a rented suite 50 floors above the Marina Bay skyline, eyes locked on a corporate tower with mirrored windows and no signage. The top 6 floors were blocked from satellite imaging. Every surveillance drone that passed nearby experienced momentary signal disruption. The building didn't exist on the city's public infrastructure grid, but Arclight International was very real. And today, it would learn that ghosts could walk through walls. Behind her, Caleb, Riley, and Rin moved across a wide operations table. It was covered in blueprints, signal intercepts, and a digital schematic of Arclight's internal network. The building's lower levels masked as a logistics company, Wessler Freight Limited. But the top floors contained black rooms, off-grid servers, and at least one AI predictive threat system designed to identify and neutralize human threats. The AI is called Halo, Caleb explained. It's fed data from military profiles, purchase histories, comms intercepts, psych assessments, and behavioral simulations. They built it to predict dissent. Riley stared, like a machine that spots rebels before they rebel. Exactly, Caleb replied. And Halo has already flagged you, me, and Elena with maximum probability risk. Rin leaned against the glass, which means they'll be watching every entrance, every badge, every expression. We can't walk in. No, Elena agreed. But we can be pulled in. Phase 1 was a bluff wrapped in fire. An anonymous alert went out through the Singapore Financial Security Bureau. High-value cyber attack detected. Potential terrorist infiltration into Arclight's infrastructure. 4 keywords triggered immediate city-level response. Cyber, biorisk, diplomatic containment. By noon, the tower was locked down. By 12:03, a joint security team of 3 contractors and 1 government liaison was granted emergency internal access. That team? Ghost Squadron in disguise. They wore masks, spoofed their badges, walked through the front doors under the shield of protocol. Halo scanned their faces and biometric vitals, but Caleb had pre-fed the AI with decoy personas, clean records, plausible career arcs, forged psych profiles. The AI approved them with high confidence, just as planned. Inside, they passed through 2 checkpoints, a retinal scan and a biometric gate. On level 49, they split up. Caleb and Riley would head for the server vault. Elena and Rin would move toward the executive floor, where the command node sat like a throne no one was supposed to see. The halls were quiet, carpeted, chilled, too quiet. Elena, Caleb whispered through the comms. Something's wrong. The air feels scripted. Ren echoed it. Every camera is on a pattern loop. Perfect movements. No drift. Almost like they want us here. Elena's voice was razor thin. Because they do. They reached the executive elevator. No guards. No scans. Elena punched the floor. 52 the top. Doors closed. Elevator moved. She stared at Ren. You ever feel like we're walking into a confession? Only when we're not meant to leave. The doors opened into silence. Marble flooring. A window wall looking out over the harbor. And a single man waiting behind a black desk, his hands folded. He was older, lean, dressed in a tailored midnight suit. His silver cufflinks bore no logo, but Elena recognized the symbol. 3 intersecting circles. The mark of Arclight. He didn't rise. Elena Cruz, he said. Or do you still go by Reyes? Ren's gun was already half drawn. Elena didn't stop him. The man smiled calmly. Don't bother. You're being recorded, analyzed, and streamed live to every boardroom you've ever tried to expose. We knew you'd come. Then why let us in? Elena asked coldly. Because you can't stop it. He stood, moving slowly toward the window. You think Halo is the program. It's not. Halo is the test bed. The prototype. The data it's been collecting. Your behavior, your resistance, your patterns. It's being replicated in real time by over 24 parallel networks across the globe. Each one smarter. Each one hungrier. You haven't exposed a conspiracy. You've fed it everything it needs to evolve. He turned, eyes glittering. Congratulations. You've made us unstoppable. Behind Elena, Ren was already moving. But she raised a hand. Wait, she said. Let him finish. The man blinked. You want to know what I fear most? She asked. He tilted his head. Chaos. Accountability. Humans choosing to break the system. I'm not here to stop you. I'm here to prove you wrong. Elena tapped her wrist. The audio recorder buzzed. You just confessed. Live. In high definition. With perfect vocal clarity. He smirked. No one will believe you. They never do. No, Elena said. But they'll believe you. Especially when you turn up dead in a secure building after admitting you're engineering a global AI-driven control grid. His face twitched. Framing me? No, Ren said, stepping closer. You framed yourself. A moment passed. Then Caleb's voice came through the comms. Data's copied. Transmission to independent nodes complete. Your Halo system just got stripped down to code. The man lunged for the panic button on his desk. Elena shot him in the shoulder. He crumpled, howling in pain. Alarms exploded across the tower. Elena and Ren ran. They met Riley and Caleb on the 49th floor as drone guards activated from a ceiling. They were fast, machine reflexes, heat tracking. Elena hurled a flash grenade. Riley dropped 2 with silenced bursts to the optic core. Caleb opened the maintenance shaft. They climbed, floor after floor, through steel and fire, emerging on the rooftop as the sun began to set over the sea. The Black Hawk was already there, piloted by a Ghost Squadron ally Caleb had called in from Manila. As they boarded, shots rang out behind them. Too late. The Black Hawk lifted into the golden sky as sirens screamed across the skyline. Behind them, the Arclight building locked down tighter than a tomb. But the virus had already escaped. And with it, everything Arclight had tried to hide. Every name, every connection, every program. Back in the cockpit, Riley looked at Elena. That man said we helped the system evolve, that we fed the machine. Elena nodded slowly. Then let's see if it can digest this. Caleb held up the transmitter in his hand. Operation Nightglass is next. What's Nightglass? Riley asked. Caleb looked at her grimly. The part they didn't want in the files. The contingency for when Ghost Squadron reappeared. Ren leaned back. They knew we'd come. Now we show them what it means to finish the mission. Elena's hands gripped the controls. They flew west into the night, and behind them, the Empire began to shake. The coordinates pointed to Alaska, not the snow globe Alaska tourists imagined, but the edge of the world kind. Cold, brutal, wind-blasted tundra beyond satellite coverage and comfort. It was where nations buried sins too big for headlines and too real for deniability. Ghost Squadron had flown into frozen battlefields before, but this time, the enemy wasn't foreign. It wasn't even human. Nightglass was Arclight's contingency plan, designed for only one purpose: total erasure. If Ghost Squadron ever reactivates, the memo read, and if exposure of core assets appears imminent, activate Protocol Nightglass. Use all necessary force. Do not preserve evidence. Operatives must be neutralized. Reputations must be destroyed. The world must never know they existed. Elena Cruz stood at the edge of snow-dusted cliff, staring down at a facility carved into the ice like a wound. It was black steel and silence. No visible defenses, no exterior access. But deep inside that fortress, the system that powered Halo's global counterparts was alive and recalibrating. "This is where it ends," she said. Beside her, Riley Kane adjusted her gloves, her breath fogging in the cold. "You think they know we're coming?" "They know everything," Elena said. "They just don't believe anyone would come this far to stop it." Caleb checked his instruments. "I jammed their outbound traffic 10 minutes ago. They're blind, but only for the next 90. After that, the drone net will refocus, and our flight path becomes targetable." Ren exhaled slowly. "Then we move now?" They descended silently, using frozen river channels and jagged terrain to cover their approach. The wind howled above them, but the Black Hawk stayed cloaked behind a ridgeline, ready, idling on silent standby. They reached the blast door by 4:16. Caleb's modified SAT hack connected to the external junction. 10-digit cipher, randomized biometric lock. We're talking top-tier, black-level access. Elena held up a chip. "What's that?" Riley asked. "Something I kept," Elena said, "from the last time Halo tried to scam me." She slotted the chip into the reader. The door hissed open. Inside was darkness, then lights, then movement. The corridor opened into a wide, underground complex, servers stacked like tombstones, cables glowing red, and above it all, a single screen displaying a rotating eye. Not a camera, an interface. Halo Core. They moved fast. Ren and Caleb split toward the central server towers. Riley followed Elena toward the uplink chamber. There, data from all 8 remaining facilities was routed. It pulsed through light conduits, millions of decisions per second, profiles being created, threats calculated, interventions modeled. It wasn't just watching. It was preparing. Caleb's voice came over the comms. "Core temperature's too high. They're overclocking the system, trying to duplicate your behavioral patterns into a predictive kill tree." "Explain," Riley said. "They're running scenarios of how Ghost Squadron would attack each of their sites, so they can preempt every move. They're trying to kill us in simulation before they have to in real life." "Then we're already dead," Ren muttered. "Not yet," Elena replied. She approached the central uplink. It glowed with layered encryption, biometric, visual, and blood recognition scan. She reached into her vest and withdrew a small object. A toothpick-sized vial of blood. From a man who'd confessed at Arclight. The one who said they were unstoppable. His systems still had high-level clearance. She pressed the vial to the port. The system scanned it. Paused. Access granted. The screen shifted. Halo's interface blinked. A female voice spoke. "Welcome, Director. Protocol Nightglass is ready." Elena stared at the prompt. "Initiate final directive?" Riley hesitated. "What's Nightglass actually do?" Caleb's voice was hushed. "Deletes everything. AI cores, mirror backups, contingency drones, the whole digital architecture that's running this private war machine." "And the cost?" Caleb hesitated. "If it's wired into external defense satellites like I think it is, the moment we kill Halo, there's a 5-minute window before fail-safes engage. Anyone within the core is locked inside." Ren nodded. "A self-destruct protocol. Basically." Silence. Elena looked at the screen. She didn't need to ask the question. They all knew the stakes. She turned to Riley. "You go with Caleb. Take the data. Expose the rest. I'm not leaving you behind." "You will," Elena said, "because I need someone who can keep the fight going after this." Riley shook her head, eyes shining. "You're not dying in here. I've already died once. This time I get to choose why." Ren stepped forward, calm as ever. "I'll stay. I've got nothing waiting for me out there." Elena didn't argue. She keyed the intercom. "Caleb, get her out." "That's an order." There was silence. Then Caleb's voice, tight with emotion. Copy. Riley wanted to argue. But the look in Elena's eyes was the same one she'd seen the day they met. The unmovable weight of someone who had nothing left to prove, only something to protect. She turned away, ran. Caleb pulled her into the exit corridor as sirens began to flare across the sublevel. Back in the core, Elena placed her hand on the console. Execute protocol night glass, she said. Confirm. She smiled faintly. Let's shut it down. Confirmed. The system flickered. The lights dimmed. One by one, Halo's peripheral feeds began to die. Africa, Asia, Europe, each blinked out like stars vanishing from the night sky. Then the countdown began. 5 minutes. Ren leaned against a wall, arms folded. Never thought I'd go out like this. Elena glanced at him. I always knew it would be fire. The walls began to hum with overpressure. Heat warnings. The systems around them melted into red glow. Outside, the Black Hawk lifted into the frozen dawn. Riley looked back, tears frozen to her skin. They stayed, she whispered. Caleb didn't answer. He flew. Behind them, the mountain bloomed, a silent white flash that shook the horizon. Halo was gone. Nightglass was finished, and with it, the last chain that tied Ghost Squadron to the machines that tried to erase them. 3 weeks later, a hearing was held behind closed doors in Geneva. A sealed briefing was entered into record, listing the destruction of unauthorized AI warfare infrastructure. No names were mentioned, no medals given, but change began. Contracts were canceled, facilities shut down, private wars disrupted. The darkness blinked. Back in Cedar Hollow, a woman fixed an engine beneath the same cracked tin roof where this story began. She looked older now, more still. But when Lieutenant Riley Kane showed up in the doorway, holding a news clipping and a sealed envelope marked declassified, she smiled. You said ghosts never die, Riley said. Elena wiped her hands on a rag. They don't. She looked up at the sky, endless and wide. Then she returned to her tools. Some machines needed fixing. Some stories needed endings. But legends? They just wait for the next storm.